Great. Welcome everyone to our GetFTR webinar. I'm Heather Staines. I've been working for the past 3.5 years as outreach manager for libraries, publishers, and integrators. And I'm sitting in today for Hylke Koers, Chief Information Officer of STM Solutions, as the speaker and moderator. I'm joined by my colleague Diane Benham, as well as Lisa Janicke Hinchliffe, who'll be speaking in a moment. And I want to say right out of the gate that having some weird camera issues. So while you can see me and presumably see each other, I can't see anyone. Just see blank boxes. But we'll make it work. I'm pretending like it's the old WebEx days when we didn't even use video. Oh, those were the days, weren't they? I'm excited to see familiar names amongst the attendees, but also new folks as well. A few housekeeping items. This is being recorded, as you heard, so please keep your audio on mute. You're welcome to have your camera on or off as you prefer. As I mentioned, I won't be able to see you, but others can. If you have questions during the body of the webinar proper, which we think will be no longer than a half hour, please put them in the chat. My colleague Diane will be monitoring the chat. We will hold questions until the end unless it's like an urgent clarifying question, which we'll try to interject to clear that up for you. We hope to have plenty of time today for discussion and questions. So at that point, you're welcome to unmute and ask your question. But please raise your hand to make it a little bit easier for us to manage that. All right, still got some folks coming in. All right, let me move you guys out of the way and we will get started. So I'm gonna give a brief GetFTR update. If there are folks who are coming to this completely unfamiliar with GetFTR, or if it's been a while, we'll give you a little bit of an update and a refresher. And then we're going to talk, Lisa's going to talk a little bit about the GetFTR browser extension. Diane will also bring you a brief product update. And then, as I mentioned, we should have plenty of time for discussion. So, kicking off. GetFTR is an initiative that's been underway for about 4 years now, intended to accelerate the discovery and access of authoritative, trusted research. It's intended to give researchers access to the trusted version of record in a single smart link. It uses high-quality entitlements indicators to show subscription, OA, and free content, and thus remove anxiety and frustration amongst the research process by closing that gap between discovery and access, as we mentioned there on the starting slide. It's intended to remove friction in the authentication process by supporting multiple access methods and removing unnecessary steps to give researchers a cohesive user experience when they're traveling across multiple sites and multiple discovery platforms. It's free for discovery services to integrate for content syndication platforms and other integrators as well. And it was initially developed and supported by the founding publishers that you see there depicted on the right side of your screen. And we will show you who's participating today. Sorry, I'm trying to click like multiple things here. And now my mute button is over my screen advance. So this is like one of those anything could happen times. So you'll be able to say you were here then. Quickly, just a peek behind the curtain if you're thinking Wizard of Oz themes, or under the hood if you're more of an automotive thinker. We have our researcher here to the left, and she's gone to her preferred discovery service pathway. She can put in keywords, she can put in article titles, she can put in a DOI, and then she hits go. Behind the scenes, the GetFTR API sends the user's affiliation along with the article DOIs to the participating publishers in GetFTR to check to see whether she should have access. Those participating publishers give article level entitlements and links, which populate her search results as she's scrolling through them. She can click on that and go right into the full text. Many times we get a question, how does this compare to some other options that researchers may have? So accuracy. It really minimizes the potential for metadata mismatches. It comes in real time through that API-based interaction, so it should be up to date. It's extremely granular. I mentioned it's DOI-based, and that's really important when you want to catch the OA articles that are in hybrid journals, and it's a fully automated process. So how does it look when you're actually utilizing it? This is a screenshot from our demo site. It will signal those entitlements, as I mentioned, to remove uncertainty and frustration for researchers. So here is an example in our demo site where the user is looking for vitamin D, or vitamin D, as my colleague Diane would say. And here are the search results. So the first one there, which is the journal Age and Aging from OUP. You'll see the little link below that says View PDF with the GetFTR indicator, which is a circle in those little arcs showing. And that tells the user that in this case, you can see above the article title there that it's free access to that particular article. The third example there, which is a journal Reactions Weekly, which is a Springer journal. This is apparently a subscription article that the researcher has access to. And again, they can click on that and get right to their article. So I mentioned that GetFTR streamlines access to trusted content on publisher websites. So what does this look again when you're in a discovery service view? So what's happening past those clicks that I just showed you in the demo site? Left-hand side of your screen, some search results have populated showing both Elsevier and Wiley articles are available. The researcher clicks on that first Elsevier article, and if they're not recognized by their IP, they're off campus, or if they're not logged in and authenticated already through something else that they're doing as part of their regular activity, once they click on View PDF, they will be taken to their institutional login to do their federated authentication. Then they will go directly to their article on the right-hand side there. But once they return to their search results in their discovery service, even though the second article is coming from a Wiley journal, that authentication persists, and they are able to go directly to their Wiley article. So it's a wonderful network effect. You could join, publishers can join FTR to get support for the scholarly research, to support the scholarly research community. So I've got a lot of things going on my screen. That's like a test here. GetFTR currently supports more than 100 million entitlements decisions per week. And this is, as you can see by that chart on the left, which shows, if I can ask everyone to mute, I'm hearing some throat clearing happening. I can't see the culprit, so I won't call you out, but please do mute if possible. You can see the number of entitlement requests there that are continuing to increase nicely over time. We currently have more than 50 publishers and integrators participating. And if we look at the percentage of article output that those publishers cover as a result of all, compared to the entire estimated article output, we're covering almost 61% of the article output today and handling 5 billion entitlement requests per year. And you can see the publisher discovery service and syndication integrators there nicely alphabetized on your screen. These indicators can be seen across multiple tools. So I just want to show you some of the types of integrations where you might find these indicators. The left-hand side is a Semantic Scholar, and that is a website integration. So you can see there below the abstract, there's a button, access PDF via your institution. It's got that little GetFTR circle with the arcs showing. You just click that and go on your way. The second example there, working from left to right, is a researcher app, which is an example of how GetFTR might look integrated into an app. So just there next to the title, you can see the GetFTR indicator, and the link is embedded behind the title there. The next one is an example of the browser extension, which we'll be talking a little bit more today. This is how GetFTR might look in not only our browser extension, but in other extensions, for example, Readcube Papers, just to name one. And here we're showing the links injected above Google Scholar. And then on the right-hand side, publisher reference lists. And there are different ways this is indicated, sometimes on a hover over, sometimes indicated within the button itself. And we will talk to you a little bit more about how it looks. This turns the reference list at the end of an article into a little discovery service, recommender service, as I like to say. And now I'm going to hand over to our special guest, or a very special guest. And while people always say they need no introduction, I think Lisa Janicke Hinchliffe does require no introduction, but I will give her one anyway because we're happy that she's here. Lisa is professor as well as coordinator for research and training, professional development in the University Library at the University of Illinois at Urbana-Champaign. She's also an affiliate faculty member in the University School of Information Sciences and the Center for Global Studies. She's currently secretary of the IFLA Education and Training Section and a chair of the ORCID Board of Directors. You probably have come across her in her role as chef for SSP's The Scholarly Kitchen blog, and she is a member of the GetFTR Advisory Board. Welcome, Lisa.
Great. Thanks, Heather. It's really great to be part of this presentation here today and share some of the ways that librarians should be aware of GetFTR and the way that this service is improving access pathways for library users. So as you mentioned, since 2020, researchers have been benefiting from GetFTR links in a number of popular tools that have direct integrations. These are just some of them that you can see over here on the right-hand side. The discovery tools, scholarly collaboration networks, reference manager integrations, as well as, again, in the publisher platforms themselves. GetFTR signals where full text, either subscribed or open access, is available and provides streamlined access. Now, of course, for open access articles, it's able to say to anyone, you have access here, and here's a streamlined pathway to that PDF or other format. For the subscribed content, GetFTR's links are entitlement enabled. In other words, they recognize that based on either IP or federated authentication, the user has access to the subscribed content. Now, they may still need to go through an authentication workflow, but that workflow will be presented to them in an integrated way and access to the full text streamlined. Next slide, Heather. So I mentioned that there's been direct integration since 2020. What is very exciting now is that there is the possibility of a browser extension. So for those platforms that either don't or won't integrate GetFTR directly, the browser extension gives a researcher the possibility of enabling these kinds of links in any number of other sites. So, for example, I think we're all as librarians quite aware of things like Google Scholar, but of course you've got Crossref, EBSCOhost, Web of Science, ProQuest, Primo, Ex Libris, all these things, where the browser extension will bring that GetFTR functionality to the user's website experience. And it is available, the extension, in the Chrome store, the Firefox store, and the Microsoft store. So all of these have an option right now for people to download and install that browser extension. And as you can see over here on the right-hand side, an example of how it starts to appear within your Google Scholar results if you have that browser extension enabled. So it's quite a lovely feature. I will admit I've installed the browser extension quite a bit ago. And the other day I was in Google Scholar and said to myself, oh, wow, there's all these PDF links. And then I was like, oh, right, that's because I set it up that way. So it becomes so integrated. It's really quite seamless. Next slide, Heather. So our researcher and librarian feedback, it's already being used by a number of libraries and researchers around the world. There was a beta test and then has been rolled out. The feedback was very positive. For example, from a researcher, this is so cool. I just pulled up Google Scholar to test this out, and I love that it mentions if it's open access or subscription. And hear from a librarian, I think about how our users tend to use Google Scholar and PubMed to find articles, and I thought it was very useful seeing a little button pop up to indicate it's already accessible to me through our institution. The browser extension is completely free, so anyone can and is encouraged to try it out. Next slide. So how do you get this extension? You download it from the store for your preferred browser. You enable it in your browser, just as you enable any other extension. And we have both information on the GetFTR site in text format, as well as a video if you'd like to watch that there. We also have a resource kit coming soon to benefit communications that librarians might have with researchers. A final step here is that we have an animation for you here today that will show you how this works. So here's a sneak peek of this, Heather. Oh, there we go. So it's literally just a minute or two for people to download this for either Chrome, Firefox, or Edge. So pick your browser of choice or pick them all if you are a use all the browsers person. I know many librarians are. You add your institutional affiliation in the browser. Then you pin the extension to your toolbar. And that's it. So it's really quite seamless process here. You'll see these GetFTR buttons, and you'll see there's a difference between the open access ones and the ones that tell you that they're available. So if you want to, you can easily download that from the website if you want to watch the animation, or honestly, just go to the browser extension store for your browser of choice. Next slide, Heather. Oops.
Was there supposed to be another slide there?
I think I am now turning it over to Diane, who will give us the product update. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you.
Thanks, Lisa. If we go on to the next slide, Heather, thank you. So GetFTR has evolved in the last 4 years to meet the needs of researchers. Back in March 2020, we launched GetFTR so that discovery tools such as Mendelian Dimensions could alert researchers to content that their institution had made available to them via subscriptions or open access. Initially, the service started with 5 publishers providing real-time entitlement checks and supplying those smart links to which take the researcher to the latest version of the full text. By the end of 2020, more publishers joined, making their content easier to both discover and access. And 10 discovery tools started using the GetFTR service and displaying those indicators and adding smart links on article pages and in search results. Also, towards the end of the year, Koers came on board. They had a slightly different use case. They used GetFTR to support open research compliance. The following year, in 2021, as more publishers and discovery tools started partnering with GetFTR, we provided a set of tools to streamline the onboarding, sort of self-service portal, so that we could quickly provide even more GetFTR links for researchers. The same year, publishers started to use GetFTR to signal which article reference the researcher was entitled to read, improving onward journeys. In 2022, ResearchGate and Science Direct started to provide third-party content on their platforms and selected GetFTR to check entitlements. GetFTR also recorded its 5 billionth entitlement check, which gives you a sense of the scale of the service. Last year, at the end of the year, we launched what we call the GetFTR Open Access and Free service, providing access to the most up-to-date version of record for all open and free content registered with Crossref, including those DOIs and hybrid journals, which you don't have to subscribe to. We also launched the GetFTR browser extension that Lisa just spoke about, which expands the number of discovery tools that display GetFTR links. The uptake has been good, and we've just released a blog post on this today, which you can find on the Get Full Text Research website. So this year, what we plan to do is to further increase the number of GetFTR links made available. And we'll make the extension work for any DOI on any page that's being viewed. We're also enhancing the GetFTR service to include information that supports research integrity, informing the researcher where an article has been retracted or updated. More on this on the next slide, Heather. So as I mentioned, GetFTR is planning to signal retractions and corrections at the point of discovery, which we think is a key concern for researchers, librarians, and publishers. Data will be provided by Crossref and Retraction Watch and delivered by GetFTR to discovery tools. As you can see at the bottom left, additional buttons will be added, which when clicked will show more information about the changes that have been made to the article. So you can see the second screen at the top right. And those changes, as I'm sure you know, could be things such as errors in the image or concerns about the data. The GetFTR browser extension will be the first to display these secondary buttons, and we'll make the service available to anyone who wishes to use it. On to the next slide, Heather. Lastly, I wanted to pick up on Heather's point earlier in the webinar that publishers are now integrating on article references to signal access to full text. There are 5 that do so today, and if there are publishers on the call, you know, we encourage you to do this. Additionally, some publishers, I've been in touch with a couple of publishers in the last week who would like to add GetFTR links to their search results on their journals platform. Of course, this will remove the frustration for researchers who are unsure if they have access to the full text or not. And lastly, you know, please do inform your colleagues and researchers to look out for these GetFTR indicators. Please do get in touch if you'd like to hear more about any of the items on the roadmap. And back to you, Heather.
Thanks, Diane. And let me turn my video back on for those of you who can actually see video. For those who joined late, I'm having some problems where I cannot see the cameras for folks. Let's see. My camera just went off again. This is like one of those.
Actually, Heather, when it's on, you're just blank. So maybe just leave your phone.
Okay, thank you. That's more rest assured. When people can see you on your camera, that's when you get nervous. So so great. So that was a wonderful overview of the recent news about the extension, how that's grown, as well as what's coming in up later this year. I noticed we did have some questions and comments in the chat. I know, Diane, you answered this, but Chris had asked about the linking according to various types of open access, and you mentioned that we would look into it. You know, I would have a question for our publishers as to how granular they're able to depict license type in their metadata, and whether that's something that can even, whether they're currently registering with Crossref. So I don't know if anyone wants to comment on that, or maybe Diane, and you can elaborate.
Yeah, I think this is something that is recorded at Crossref, and we're familiar with obviously with the different types of licenses. I wonder if Chris, if you're able to unmute and tell us a little bit more about that use case and how that brings value.
Sure. Just that in a corporate setting, that the phrasing non-commercial makes some corporate legal uneasy, because most of what we're doing in a corporate setting, our researchers is doing, is for profit, in a sense of commerce. So maybe the best way to see it is to have, as we often do in our negotiating licenses with publishers, is try to get explicit that even a for-profit commercial entity using research is not using it for commerce, right? That non-commercial use is not meaning you can't use it to support the commercial efforts of your company, but you're using it, but it's implying that you're trying to resell. I think that's a clear statement, but there's just a lot of hesitancy, at least in corporate libraries, around the phrasing non-commercial use, because we are for profits.
So I think, Diane, if I could say that there's a challenge here, because what GetFTR promises the user is that they'll be able to read it. It doesn't actually signal to them what they'll be able to do with it, right? And so if you have a corporate access to an article, there are also limitations if it's a copyrighted, no licensed article as well. And so I'm not sure. I think we'd have to do a lot of sort of prototyping to figure out if we were to start displaying those, what we would do about the articles that are not open access and how those would be tagged. Because the CC licenses are indications of rights of reuse or permissions to reuse, versus the permission to access and read. So it's an interesting thing to think about, how much of that data could be surfaced in that button versus where people should be relying on what's on the publisher site.
Great. Thanks for that, Lisa, and thank you, Chris, for elaborating on that use case. I'm going to jump to a question that Peter has put in the chat. When I tried out the GetFTR extension last year, there was a further step of choosing which sites you wanted to activate it for, and it seemed that there was a limit. Part of this is a recent change, so maybe Diane can talk about some of the thinking there and how it works now if you're onboarded.
Yeah, so we recently took the decision, in fact, at the Steerco last week, that we're actually going to remove that onboarding step, and we'll look for any DOI on any page that the user is viewing, and we'll then send that request to the relevant publisher to check entitlements. So these will, of course, still have to select their institution, or if they're on campus, we'll use their IP address. But we're certainly going to streamline the onboarding, as I mentioned.
Yeah, and just further, Diane, on the browser extension, given that the browser extension has the ability to show these links when DOIs are exposed or when we are able to identify a DOI, are we still putting the same amount of energy into integrating directly with those third-party sites?
Yeah, we see the extension as complementary with those direct integrations. With the extension, as you know, we're very much reliant on the researcher going to the Chrome store or the other two stores to install that extension. We would encourage, if there are any people who work for discovery tools or scholarly collaboration networks who are on the call, we would very much welcome a conversation with you. With that direct integration, every researcher will benefit.
Sorry, I just started trying to find unmute. We have a question about asking for an update on aggregator integrations. I know that this has been a hot topic since I started, more than 3 years ago, but there's a little bit of complexity around it. Maybe I could ask Diane to just give a brief update of where we are now, and then ask Lisa to jump in if necessary.
So GetFTR does support aggregators. A couple of years ago, we ran a workshop with some of the main aggregators and looked at ways how to check entitlements, both for aggregated content and with the publisher. We have had some conversations with those aggregators. I think it's a matter of priorities. I don't know if there are any aggregators on the call today, but please feel free to jump in. Yeah, so as I say, we'll keep having those conversations, Heather, with aggregators, and hope to welcome them soon.
Yeah, and Lisa, is there anything that you want?
So I was going to say, I think this is also because the work is not to enact all of this is done by the platforms and not by libraries. What would be helpful is it's helpful, of course, for GetFTR to know that you'd like this aggregator holdings data integrated, but it's actually equally important to let ProQuest or EBSCO or whoever your aggregator is to tell them that as their customer, the library that's subscribing via them, this is functionality you want from them. So I think when what you heard there is GetFTR stands ready to work with any aggregator that wants to provide entitlements data, but it has to come up on the priority list on the aggregator side that they will do this versus I'm sure they have lots of things their customers are asking them for. And so it's just important, I think, as librarians that we're talking to sort of that there's kind of a pairing up that has to happen, and we need both parties to do that pairing for us because this is part of the service that we're licensing.
Yeah, there's a follow-on question in the chat, which we could probably spend a lot of time talking about, but let's kick it off. If the discovery service is integrated with GetFTR, wouldn't that do away with the need for those services to have local provider links? And then the EBSCO term for that is custom links. This would be a welcome change, Peter thinks, but could reduce some of the value of a discovery service, perhaps. I can think of a lot of reasons why you would need discovery services beyond just these links, but that's just my thinking. Lisa?
Yeah, okay, so now we're moving to a different part of the ecosystem with the discovery layers. And actually you saw that there's actually quite a few discovery services that have integrated with GetFTR. So for at least some of these, it seems that they are able to see that there is value that they can build on and coincide with. But yeah, I think this is always the question that an integrator is going to have to ask, which is the value proposition that this offers. We're really in the weeds if we try and talk about it, but because GetFTR works off a DOI, there are other kinds of linking that we need to do to content that does not have a DOI. And that kind of linking is not currently supported by GetFTR. It works when there's a DOI. So for all that content that doesn't have a DOI, we still need those other kinds of link resolvers and linking services. Putting my librarian hat on, we still need those other tools. So it might reduce the value of the discovery layer, although it might make clearer the unique value of the discovery layer linking service. That's a
Thanks, Lisa.
complicated.
Yeah, so we could talk about that for quite some time and have a debate. There's a question. Sorry, I'm trying to juggle all these questions and try to get them in some kind of an order that makes sense. From Maria, are there plans to integrate the unpaywall feed to link out to self-archived article versions where the VOR is not available? I'm gonna ask Diane to take that since I'm playing moderator today.
Yeah, so we did look to include the unpaywall service in the GetFTR service, but what we decided to do is to develop our own. So that's the GetFTR open access and free service. And we're looking at both those license types in Crossref to identify the open access content, and working directly with those publishers that participate, who are providing us with their lists of open and free content. And sorry, Heather, what was the second? So linking off to non-version
Archived, self-archived versions.
self-archived versions. So currently, GetFTR links to the version of record on the publisher platform. But as I mentioned, we're increasing the number of supported use cases all the time. So again, if that's something that the community thinks is useful, we could take a look at that.
Yep. Thank you, Diane. I wanted to back up just a little bit in case we have folks on the call. I'm sure we do, who are a little bit newer, to the concept of GetFTR. To think about the researcher experience. So the first slide, the intro slide, closing we have it here again, the gap between discovery and access. What we know that the users of the extension were very enthusiastic about it. But can you tell us a little bit, Diane, about what we learned in the user research and what many of our partners have learned in the user research about that frustration experienced by researchers?
Yeah, so even before we developed the browser extension, so way back in 2019, we brought in some UX professionals to talk directly to researchers to sort of really learn about some of the frustrations that they had in accessing the full text, that was within their subscription. It was quite interesting to learn that some of the researchers had to click up to 10 times before they accessed the latest version of the full text. A lot of them sort of signaled frustration, sort of clicking on links, the sort of concept of click and pray, click on a link, sign into my institution, and then I find out that I still don't have access. And obviously that could happen sort of many times. So it was a very inefficient way of, conducting research. And I think, a couple of people sort of expressed this sort of context switching, and it's sort of, disrupting their sort of processes of reading research and then getting into a bit of a bad user experience in terms of trying to authenticate and access content.
Great. Lisa, anything you want to add from your side?
No, I mean, I appreciate the opportunity to give the update. I think the browser extension is a really large enhancement because, we don't have integrations with all the platforms, and this at least gives some more options with the various tools where there isn't that integration. Obviously, there's still work to be done on the entitlement side. We're hitting, a lot of what people are entitled to, but it is a concern if there's entitlements that are not being picked up because they're in the aggregators. There's a lot to be done around the whole sort of other versions of articles, because I think there's a difference too between when it's the version of record that's in a repository versus when it's a different version, and then what does the workflow look like if the user wasn't wanting that not version of record version. So building, personally, I'm looking to see what comes out of the NISO work right now to redevelop the journal article versions standard. And that might give us some help going forward with if things are tagged better, that we can be clearer for the researcher then what they're being given access to.
Mhm.
It's exciting. It's moving targets, but all moving in the positive direction. So
Yeah, so one of the reasons we wanted to invite greater participation to this webinar from the library side and give you an update is you're closest to researchers, to let them know that this extension, exists if you're in the process of communicating with them. We're also going to be presenting, posters or panel sessions at some of the larger academic meetings, in the future, so we can, communicate more directly with researchers. So if you have researchers who are directly involved with those meetings and the planning, or if you are a publisher joining this call and the subject area meetings, that you might be attending have the opportunity for some presentations, please do reach out. The GIF that we showed, I think it's 59 seconds, you'll be able to get a version of that if you want to share that out, and let us know if you need other, material to share. One of the other use cases, which I think is really interesting from the researcher side that we just touched upon in passing, as it wasn't really the topic for today, is the content syndication, which is ResearchGate, or the Science Direct Chemistry collaboration that's underway now. A lot of researchers are using the ResearchGate platform to access content, to collaborate. And maybe, Diane, could you comment a little bit on how GetFTR is used in that syndication environment?
Yeah, so if I start with the example of ResearchGate, let's start with Springer Nature. So Springer Nature were the first to use GetFTR, so that ResearchGate could check entitlements directly at source. So they syndicate content to ResearchGate, so that the user can access the content directly from the ResearchGate platform. Because they have very strict sort of latency SLAs, in this example, Springer Nature has actually shared their entitlements with GetFTR, so that we can do a sort of a faster entitlement decision for ResearchGate. We're also in discussion with other publishers who are looking to do something similar. So again, if you're a publisher on the call and looking to syndicate content either to ResearchGate or Science Direct or another platform, please let us know, and we can work with you and support you in doing that.
Great, thanks, Diane. Does anyone want to unmute and ask their question directly? Oh, we got another question just popped in. This is from Michelle, and it's a concern. Using OpenURL comes back through library discover layer and chance to compare publisher access with the record of coverage the library holds. Reporting this access denial is the library's chance to fix title transfer record problems with the receiving publisher. Is there a tool librarians can use to check whether the publisher had correctly recorded perpetual access rolled over from a former publisher? Michelle, do you mind unmuting? And I get what you're asking here. And I will say we've had some conversations on the GetFTR side, but the primary objective is this would be a time saver for you, or can you tell us a little bit more?
Yeah, no, I don't think really a time saver. I think it is a problem that we have a shortage of time to enable to check each of those title transfers as they move over, because the publishers get the data at different times. And as a librarian, I don't want to do this at the cost of creating more work for our researchers that I love GetFTR because it's so simple. But I don't want to send a signal to our user we don't have access to this journal when we should. And it's a problem with the libraries being that go-between between the selling publisher and the receiving publisher. So a lot
Yeah.
of, we can get a lot of electronic resource troubleshooting tickets that surface the discrepancy between we should have holdings and the receiving publisher didn't get that word.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, just to clarify, I want to clarify one thing you said, Michelle. GetFTR does not signal a negative. If it can, you make a definitive entitlements match, they see the link, but they don't, GetFTR doesn't ever say you don't have access. So it's more of an indicator that you're likely to have it. And we understand as researchers get used to seeing it, that they may move more quickly to those pathways, but we're not going to, we don't want to do anything to stop them from going. And so they would probably just click, if that's what they want, would click on it anyway. And if they do have that access, because that's the former publisher and it's perpetual access, they will get there. We're in some conversations around these transfer use cases, and I'm part of the NISO transfer committee. So it is something, that we're kind of looking at, but importantly, we never want to show a negative, because there could be other ways that they could get access that are just not exposed to us through the metadata.
Great, thanks.
And if I can jump in there, Heather.
And then we've got a couple other questions, but go ahead, Diane.
To say we're also starting to think about possible librarian tools. And one could be an audit to see if subscriptions have been set up correctly.
Yep.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I think I was going to say that I do think this might be more similar to the chorus use case.
Mm-hmm.
I have to think about it, but I think Michelle there might be something that GetFTR could do here in a sort of different approach to using the GetFTR data.
Mm-hmm.
Can I answer Judith's question about statistics to libraries? For example, how often GetFTR is used to gain access to articles? So libraries don't get that because ultimately, that is not something that our authentication system knows, which pathway before they hit our authentication system. The publishers get data from GetFTR on how many times GetFTR links to their content are clicked, but those links are not, so there is a data gap there. So I think we should just capture that and see if there's anything that could be done. I think Jonah might be asking a question that's too big for this webinar. But I could say that I'm happy to have email follow-up if you'd like. So about kind of where to start with some of these things.
Mm-hmm. And just to kind of piggyback on your reply there, Lisa, for the data, the access of the content happens, if you have Google Analytics set up, things like that, it's a counter usage. It's not going to be different just because GetFTR showed the links. It's not separated out as a different kind of access. You will still know that content was utilized, but as Lisa said, we don't know what happens when somebody clicks on it, and that's something we can continue to discuss.
Yeah.
I'm a little bit curious, Jonah, you're trying to think about maybe something similar that could be done around data in journals, or maybe email, I guess, email Lisa, and then we'll take it from there.
Yeah, sorry. I'm just talking about, I mean, it's a very exciting tool. Any tool that bridges gaps between researchers, making things easier for researchers, and reduces barriers to access, increases integrity. All of these tools are very exciting, and I'm just, curious if I, know someone that wants to start something, or I myself are interested in start something, where to go, who to speak with, what would be the process to, because there's so many great opportunities and so many gaps that need filling. And I've always got these ideas, and just kind of was curious. It got my juices flowing.
Yeah, one organization, if you're not already familiar with them, is Force 11.
Okay.
It started in 2011. That's the name, Force 11. It has a lot of researcher involvement, folks from the open infrastructure space, but also publishers and librarians globally. I believe they might be going back to in-person meetings later, but they've been doing virtual meetings during since the pandemic started. And a lot of those presentations and stuff are online. So if you just Google Force 11, there may be some like-minded souls there. Thanks, Lisa, that you can talk to. And lots of interesting things may be underway that are going to be talked about at their next upcoming events. So I think they have a
This is
communications
amazing.
institute this summer and more following. So great.
Thank you. That's amazing.
All right. So we just have 5 minutes left, and unless I hope I didn't miss anyone's question. But you know where to find us. This recording will be processed and shared via the STM website, and we'll make sure that registrants receive a link to that recording. And if you have any questions, concerns, ideas for future projects for us at GetFTR, we would always love to hear from you. So with that, I will thank my colleague Diane and our special guest presenter, Lisa Janicke Hinchliffe, for taking time today, and all of you for attending. It's been our pleasure to present to you, and have a wonderful rest of your day.
Thank you so much. Bye-bye.